Anything else you want to say to your fans, man?
Man, shout out to DONTAE'S Boxing Nation. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Errol Spence Jr., my whole name, and just look out for me. I'm on the come up. When I'm coming up, I'm staying up. So just tune in.
That's what it is. Thanks for your time, man. DONTAE'S Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Well, the truth, Errol Spence does it again. Another impressive knockout over a very awkward, evasive Leonard Bundu. You know, it's interesting because watching the first couple rounds, the first thing I said to myself is, no matter how this fight ends, you have to give Bundu a lot of credit because he's so slippery in there. You know, he's such a veteran. Not only did he go 12 rounds with Keith Thurman, and he gave Keith Thurman some problems in that fight, but he's also an Olympian. And he turned pro at age 30, which means he remained an amateur, and he stayed in the amateur rankings for a very long time, like a lot of European, Eastern European, and Cuban fighters do. So that means he had a lot of experience transitioning over to the pros. But going back to those first 4 rounds, this is what makes Errol Spence so special. It's his ability to adjust and figure out a puzzle. Errol Spence, he could have easily just said, you know what, this guy is too slippery, because he was actually catching Errol Spence every now and then with some sneaky overhand rights. A lot of people don't realize, but when you're fighting against shorter fighters, sometimes what appears to be a disadvantage for the short fighter turns out to be a little bit of an advantage. If you don't believe me, ask Jamel Herring, who just lost to the very talented Denis Shafikov. There was actually more of a height disparity in the Shafikov versus Jamel Herring fight. And Jamel Herring, you know, that was supposed to be his coming out party, kind of like Errol Spence being the main event tonight. Jamel Herring, who was an American Olympian. Shafikov was his big step-up fight, and he failed the test. Shafikov, he was able to get underneath Jamel Herring and land a lot of close overhand rights, and it looked like Jamel Herring was always out of range because the guy was so short. Another very short fighter that comes to mind is Mike Tyson. We all know that everyone Mike Tyson faced was damn near 5-6 inches taller than him, but he turned his short height into an advantage. With that short stature and that bobbing and weaving, great defense, he was able to come out of the water like a shark and knock these much taller guys out. So with that being said, Bundu came in there switching righty to lefty, being shorter. He was able to get off some good shots and land a couple shots on Errol Spence. But as always, like I always tell you guys, the difference from a good fighter or a good champion versus a special champion is that fighter, he can adjust. He can figure out some of the most difficult puzzles. Errol Spence, he started off going on the inside, and then he switched it up when he seen how elusive Leonard Bundu was. And then Errol Spence, he showed his boxing ability. He showed that he could work behind a jab and set things up. He was setting a lot of stuff up with his right jab, landing the left hands up and downstairs. By about the second round, I said to myself, it looks like Leonard Bundu, he'll be open for an uppercut. With that short stature, him coming in with his head down every now and then with the high guard, and coincidentally, that turned out to be the shot that Errol Spence knocked down Bundu with the first time, was an uppercut that Bundu didn't see. Now, once again, this is where the distinction comes in from Keith Thurman versus Errol Spence. We know that Keith Thurman, he was able to actually knock Bundu down, But Keith Thurman, he could not figure out how to close the show. Errol Spence, he was able to do that. Right after he knocked him down, he did not let Bundu off the hook. Same thing happened with Chris Algieri. I'm telling you guys right now, there's a reason why Bundu had never been knocked out, okay? There's a reason why Chris Algieri, he had never been knocked out despite being in the ring with Manny Pacquiao. And people can't say, oh, well, Pacquiao, that wasn't the best Pacquiao, because after Pacquiao beat Bradley, everybody said that was the best Pacquiao when he beat him the third time after the Chris Algieri fight, right? But the thing is, there is no way that Errol Spence would knock a fighter down 6 times like Manny Pacquiao did and not knock him out. And that's what separates Errol Spence from everyone else. This is a very dangerous man. I mean, the fact that none of the welterweights want to fight him, for good reason. I wouldn't want to fight him if I was in the welterweight division either. I mean, the fact that Keith Thurman had said, he has to do more, he needs to fight better opponents, etc., etc. And now Errol Spence, he gets to face one of Keith Thurman's opponents. So now we get a perfect side-by-side comparison, right? Errol Spence was able to do something to Bundu that Keith Thurman could not do to him. So it's getting to the point where it's going to be very difficult to continue using excuses to not face Errol Spence. I mean, right now, and of course, Spence is going after that Kell Brook belt, and I highly doubt that Kell Brook, after a Golovkin fight, no matter what happens, I highly doubt Kell Brook is going to face this monster, Errol Spence. I highly doubt it. I could easily see him giving that belt up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll really be interesting to see what happens. Once again, Errol Spence, I called this long time ago. I told you guys, when Floyd Mayweather was still active and he was pound for pound, I said when it comes to the coincidental list, after Floyd Mayweather retires, it'll be Andre Ward on the top of that list. Right below Andre Ward, it's going to be fighters like Terrence Crawford and then Errol Spence. And just like I predicted, that is exactly how it played out. Because Errol Spence continues to get vicious knockouts, and still he hasn't gotten the reception that a Gennady Golovkin got. Even when Golovkin knocked out Marco Antonio Rubio, even when Golovkin was knocking out fighters like Monroe, Errol Spence, he isn't getting that kind of praise in his own country, so we know what time it is. Welcome to the coincidental list. But, at the end of the day, domination, it trumps hate. And no matter how much you hate, no matter how much you criticize, you cannot stop this man from winning. That's the one thing you can't do. We've seen this with Floyd Mayweather. They use the same tactics. Larry Merchant was one of the grand wizards of the decafs, trying to discredit Floyd before he became a superstar, and it was to no avail because Floyd Mayweather, he continued to win. So now Errol Spence is on that same path right now. I don't see anybody beating Errol Spence, guys. I don't see anybody beating Errol Spence. It'll be very interesting to see who the first welterweight is, the first top welterweight is that has the courage to get in a ring with this guy. It probably will be Keith Thurman. I mean, I'm telling you right now, one thing I did like about what Keith Thurman said in one of his recent interviews, he said he's going to be watching this Bundu fight very closely because he does feel that eventually they're going to face each other. Yeah, I think he said something like maybe late 2017 or something like that, Keith Thurman said. But I wouldn't be surprised if out of Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, Kell Brook, I wouldn't be surprised if Keith Thurman becomes the first fighter to get in the ring with Errol Spence. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get in the ring. But we'll see. Because right now, the fact that Errol Spence, he just headlined a main event on primetime NBC, PBC, and got a vicious knockout in the main event, is getting very hard to continue avoiding this guy and telling the public there's no reason to fight this guy, right? It's getting hard to do that. So congratulations to Errol Spence. Once again, man, props goes out to Leonard Bundu, because Leonard Bundu was the only fighter that was willing to face Errol Spence. They asked the undefeated at the time, Sammy Vasquez, who's another good prospect that's on the PBC roster. He turned down the fight. Lamont Peterson turned down a fight with Errol Spence. And you also had Abel Sanchez fighter Panamarev, who basically said that he had an injury, but I don't even know how true that is, because before he pulled out with the injury, Abel Sanchez told me himself he didn't even know if Panamarev could beat Errol Spence. But Abel Sanchez's exact words was, but hey, if we have to fight him, we have to fight him. You feel what I'm saying? So that alone sounded like that fight wasn't going to come to fruition. So that's what it is, man. That's pretty much what it is. Once again, I can't wait to see what Kell Brook does after the Golovkin fight. It'll be very interesting. That's all I got, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Hi, my name is Janita, and you're watching DONTAE'S Boxing Nation.